Rosario, where were your grandparents from?
My grandparents were born in San Ildefonso. And my parents were, not my father, but my mother was born in San Ildefonso, and her siblings, Ernestina Gonzalez, were born in San Ildefonso. But I found the baptismal certificate belonging to Victor Romero and Refugio Romero, and they baptized them, and they were born in San Ildefonso.
Okay. And what were the circumstances that your family had a homestead in Los Alamos?
In sometime in the late 1800s, I guess, my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather, David Romero and Francisquita Duran Romero, sent an application for a homesteading in Los Alamos. They finally acquired it into the 1900s, and they received a grant, and they had a little ranch up at Los Alamos. As a matter of fact, it had 160 acres in Los Alamos. But of course, they built they had to be out there for planting and all that. That's what we're going to do. They were going to be farmers. And they set up a log cabin in Los Alamos to hold the equipment that they took when they took their mules or whatever. They went up there to plow and prepare the ground for planting during the spring. And my mother told me that whenever the freeze in April, they always made their way to Los Alamos in April through this road. And before that, they had both of my great-grandfathers, Victor David Romero and Antonio Sanchez, were involved in actually make the trail up to Los Alamos, making the road or building the road. And they called it El Camino de la Culebra, which means the snake road, because it was like that. And it as a matter of fact, it happened when they finally got through, before my great-grandfather, Antonio Sanchez, a boulder ran over, crushed him to death. And so they had to wait a while before they could really make the trek up there in the spring, when they got the road all cleared out, just of rocks and stones and boulders, so that their mule or the oxen, I don't know what they had, would carry the wagon and carry their equipment and their seeds and everything when they went in April. That's what she told me. And so he got killed in 1900, I guess, or a little before my mom was born.
Now, do you have any paperwork on how your family acquired the homestead?
Well, we had the paperwork that came that we saw. They called it. They gave them the 160 acres. I guess that's what it was. What they had to do.
Was there anybody's signature on that homestead, on the paperwork?
No.
The president was it?
The president, he got a letter from President Wilson, my grandfather, to Victor Romero, congratulating him on his land grant or whatever, or his homesteading, and to go ahead and live up there if they could. But of course, they already lived in San Ildefonso, so they made their way up there to farm. That's what it was, a little farm. Everybody had their farms there. They weren't the only ones. Montoyas were there too, and Gomez's people. Yes.
Do you remember families other than the Montoyas and the Gomez's that lived up there?
Garcias.
Garcias.
That's why the Garcia Canyon is named after the Garcia people from Guachupangue. Teresa Garcia was the one who started that classified action, got everybody together.
Did you ever live in Los Alamos?
No, I didn't. No. My mother, they would go up there. my mother said that they would make a trek in the summer. Sometimes they would go look at the fields, but it would take a whole day, she said. We had to pack a lunch, and we went with the whole wagon up there, and they would stop at this place where they have water was running, I guess, from the canyon, and that's where they would eat their lunch and then go up to the ranch and work there and do the planting. Sometimes, not all the time, but then they would stay in this little, and they were building the little log cabin there, so that they could stay, put their equipment in there, so that they wouldn't have to haul everything every time that they went up there.
Did any of your ancestors work for the Los Alamos Ranch School?
Mr. Gonzalez was my he was my uncle through marriage. He was married to my Aunt Ernestine, Aunt Ernestine was my mother's sister, oldest sister.
And what was Mr. Gonzalez's first name?
Vences. Vences Gonzalez, and he ran the shop there, I think, or something. The post office too. Okay. Post office, and he was involved there with a lot of in the boys' school. Yeah. The boys' school, and he met a lot of children or young people who came from back east who were suffering from asthma or something like that, and they stayed there in that school. And he was involved in more supervising, I guess, the area there. But my Aunt Ernestine and her family lived up there. My cousins lived up there. And they used to come and visit my grandmother. And I remember, because they had a 1934 car. I remember that. They would come bring the family down to Guachupangue. And then we would go to my grandma's to see the family. You know Severo Gonzalez, don't you?
Gonzalez,
yeah, he's my cousin, yeah.
And Severo has a brother named Ray, right?
Ray.
Now, the Army came in and took over the land.
Yes.
What was the reaction from your ancestors about the Army taking over the land?
All I know from interviewing these other people too, and my grandfather was, I remember my mother, I found letters that said, estos son los papeles de la sierra. He used to call my grandma my grandfather wrote, and there are papeles de la sierra, where they had the papers that said where area 160 acres, and in today's area 55 or something like this. And they came and they told them that they had to leave because they were going to have the soldiers. They called them soldiers or policemen because they saw them in uniform. And so they just said, well, we have to get out. They didn't have to, my grandparents didn't have to get out much, except maybe their equipment that they had, the farming equipment that they had up there, which were hand things, you know, stoop labor stuff, you know. And so they didn't have to get out much, but they could not go and plant up there anymore. So they told them that they would pay them, but they never did, I guess. They never did. And if I recall, one time that they had offered them $7 an acre, see, but they never gave them any money, I guess. I don't think so. Anyway, they just didn't go to plant anymore, and they just gave up their land. What else could they do? Because they were frightened by these people in uniform. They came with guns and whatnot, and all of a sudden they came to them and they told them, well, you can't come and plant anymore over here. We're going to take over. The government wants your land. And one of the things that was very hard for them to understand is that everything, maybe they wrote letters to them in English, but there was nobody to translate these letters for them. So they were like, amen, you know? And they didn't understand most of the stuff. And so they just agreed. See, you know? What could they do? And they would speak the language problem there. But my great-grandparents didn't have too much. They only brought their animals down, and what could they do? And their equipment that they had to continue their farming in San Alfonso. But that's all I know about it. And I knew that they had been, that they weren't compensated. That's how I knew. A little bit later on, when I was growing up, you know, and I understood a little bit more. And then when I was doing the research for the lawyers, then I found all these letters and all these the letter from President Wilson to my grandfather, and and then also he went to court in Santa Fe for some property or something, because his son was, my uncle David was named David also, so then maybe they got him confused with the older David, the grandfather, the father.
Now, after Los Alamos became a project, did any of your relatives work at Los Alamos?
Well, only my sister Rosana went to work when she graduated from high school. Okay. And she worked but there was an army camp, see? Yeah. We used to see the trucks go, and then the soldiers in the back of the trucks, and then they would wave at us when we were out there in the yard. And many of these people who worked, many of the scientists, I'm sure they stopped at our house because we had lots of lilacs all over, and they would stop to buy flowers, and they would give us 25 cents, and we would save that 25 cents to go to Santa Clara Day.
This is in Guachupangue.
In Guachupangue, yes.
Can you tell us where Guachupangue is located?
Oh, Guachupangue is located about, I would say, from Española south up the little hill, I would say 3/4 of a mile, I would say, because we used to walk to school, and it was 3 times a day or 4 times a day, and then we'd go downtown. We call it La Plaza, down there and up to Guachupangue.
In other words, the road to Los Alamos went through the village of Guachupangue.
All the time until and it was not paved even. It was paved later on when the government started, the trucks and the buses would go there, and all this dust all over the place. And they finally paved it, the county paved it. But it wasn't paved, not while I was growing up, until then. But they had buses. My sister used to go to Los Alamos in the bus, and she got a job in a cafeteria, selling tickets to the soldier for the meals, I guess, in the cafeteria. And she met a lot of people there that I knew that were, a lot of her classmates worked in the same situation because they just graduated from high school and went to look for a job over there. And they went and they landed in a cafeteria. They needed all these people to work in the cafeteria. And then one day she happened to be in a cafeteria, and she had met this person who used to go eat there. And he says, "What are you doing here selling tickets? Why don't you go work for Zia Company?" So that's when she went, I guess, and applied, and she got a job, and she became, that's when the computers were starting to come in, and she was in payroll division. She told me she was making the little holes in the little cards that I remember. She said in the payroll division that she was working there. But first of all, they had to go to training to use those big machines. That's what she said. That's how I recall her. But she was working, and she had money to bring home to the family. And she helped our parents, because my parents they were farmers too, like everybody else. And sometimes my father worked in the highway department, sometimes, not all the time. And that was about, jobs in Española weren't available unless you worked in a store, a clerk, or whatever. And, or you worked in the highway department if you happened to know somebody who was a Democrat or a Republican. and they could pass you through, you see. And that's what my father did. You know, you vote for me and I'll give you a job. Go see this person, you know. Well, that's where Emilio comes in. Bless his heart. Anyway, that's the way they got little jobs here and there. Or unless you work for the school district as a janitor or whatever. But most of the people who went to work at Los Alamos had janitorials. They did the maintenance, because my girlfriend's father, when he had a little farm there too, and he went to work at Los Alamos, but he was a janitor. And my Uncle Ernie, you know Uncle Ernest Romero, but yeah, he was my mother's brother. And he went over there after he retired from I don't know what. He was working in a gas company, a butane, something. And he went to work over there, and he was a messenger too. And the minute and I know my neighbor next door, she went in the bus, and she worked, I guess, as a maid or something like that. She was in the early morning. In the summertime, it was early in the morning, it was still dark, I think, when they were going up and raising up all this dust all over. And we live next to a highway there, to a road there.
Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned that one night you saw many trucks coming from Los Alamos
Oh, yes, this-
on their way to Socorro.
I presume, we don't know.
Tell us the date.
The day was, it was July the 6th, the 7th. I suppose it would be the 7th because when they came by there, my sister and I used to sleep on the porch in this little bed, and the dog was there and everything. And it was too hot to stay in the house. And so we made a little bed there, and all of a sudden what woke me up was the fact that I could see these lights coming down the road from the south to the north. But I didn't hear, the dog didn't get disturbed or anything. He was under the bed there. And I watched and watched, and then one truck, and then when they came, since we were about 100 feet away from the road there, and the fence was there, and the light bushes were in the front, and they stopped right in front because we had 6 cottonwood trees around the house that my grandfather Martinez had put there, see? So they were like sentries all the way around. And so this tree had a big branch across the road. And when they hesitated there, the truck hesitated there, that's when I really looked up there, and these people got down, and they got up on the army truck. It was an army truck. And they pushed with a stick or whatever they had, the branch so that the truck could move under, see? Now the other trucks were very slow, and they were following this big truck. And all of them had their parking lights on, so slowly. They were about 2 miles an hour. And then when they reached that area, they would get down, push the thing up, and go through. But they were so slowly. And that's why the dogs didn't bark or anything, because they just didn't make any noise at all. And I remember that. And then later on, 10 days later, then of course I was 13 or 12 years old, I guess. Then I heard about this explosion somewhere. And I thought, oh, they're going to Tennessee. Because I heard that they were going to Tennessee or something. And it was about the 16th of July, I believe, that this happened in White Sands. But see, I wasn't aware of it. So it wasn't important to me because I didn't know. But I remember I said, oh, I know where they're going. They're going to go over there to Tennessee to bring some more stuff. I mean, that was in my preteen mind, and my sister didn't pay attention, but I did. But I remember the dates because then on the 6th of August, it was the big one. And I said, wow, that must have been when they were taking that bomb right in front of Guachupangue, right in front of our house. That's in my own mind. Of course, I didn't tell nobody, because I didn't tell my father nor my mother. They weren't aware of it. I didn't discuss anything like that. Just because they were going to ask me questions. What were you doing up? Whatever. So no, they didn't know. I didn't blab or anything like that. And I said, but in my mind, in my little mind that I had at the time, but didn't study or anything like that, we weren't aware. Many people weren't aware. They were duh, so to speak. They didn't pay attention. They said, well, they're doing something secret. In our play, because I was in theater, we had a play called Los Farolitos de Christmas or Navidad. And I was in that play. And they mentioned this, oh, everybody's going to Los Alamos. I remember the line, the storekeeper. So-and-so is going to the line. Yeah, they're building a bomb. What kind of a bomb is it? They discussed that in the play. Rodolfo Anaya, he wrote that line. And I remember that. And he said, yes, Maria is going to go work at Los Alamos. Everybody's working at Los Alamos. From here, what are we going to do when all the boys are gone and we don't have anybody to make the luminarias? So we're going to have to depend on the little children to do it. And of course, the grandfather said, no, I'll do it. I'll go chop the wood and I'll do the ocote, for the luminarias. And then they discovered how to make the farolitos, you see. That's a whole play. It's kind of a neat one. But I remember those lines that Anaya put in there. It says, "Oh no, everybody's going to Los Alamos. We can't find anybody, and the men are all in the service already. They're at war, so we don't have anybody to make them luminarias." And of course, the grandfather said, "Oh wow, I'll make them. I'll go." And he was sick, so he couldn't. So the children, the people who, and I have the tape. They taped the play. And therefore, yeah, I ran it the other day and says, "Look at me, there I am." I played a comadre in the play. And it was sort of a bilingual thing, you know.
Do you remember what happened when the war ended? What did your parents and neighbors or anybody say about the war and the bombs being made?
Well, I know my brother Herminio was drafted when he was a junior in high school. He was a junior in high school. In 1946, when my sister graduated, there was only one boy of a senior class of 12. And it was because he was 16 years old and he was a senior in high school. And all the juniors had been drafted. And my brother was one of them. He landed in the South Pacific. And that's where he was wounded. And to go fight the Japanese. At the time, they called them Japs, you see. And in the newsreel, that's how, when we went to the movies, we saw the newsreel and said, "Oh, the Japs are bombing this and bombing that and bombing all that stuff." But my brother came home. In fact, my mother had the telegram they sent from San Francisco hospital where he had been wounded. And he was in the hospital. He said, "I am fine. I will be home soon." And I remember when he came in the Trailway bus, and my sister was at Evans Drug Store and met him there, and they walked up to Guachupangue, and he was limping. And he came, and the war was over. But they took all these young people, and he wasn't the only one from Guachupangue who, in fact, one of them from Guachupangue was a prisoner in the Philippines for 3 years. When he came back home, he just sat there in this tiny little place all the time staring into space because they had put him in a cage. And he was in the march too. He died about 3 years ago. Sam Mavihil. He used to be the car salesman too. Yeah. He was one of the survivors.
But do you remember what people said when the war ended?
Well, yeah, the prayers were answered because everybody had somebody in the war. Everybody said, "Oh, now my son is going to come back, and oh, this war is awful." You know, it was, especially the ones, we didn't have television or radio, very seldom, very little bit of radio. As a matter of fact, that's when they put the electricity over there, or telephones for that matter. So we didn't know too well. The only thing we had, if we happened to go to the movies, young people, they would see the newsreel, and they were always terrible. And we used to see the soldiers dying and being killed, and everybody had somebody in the service, you know, in the war. And that's how I remember. And also I remember during the war we had the stamp book for buying things. We could not buy shoes or sugar or coffee. In fact, I still have the books, those stamp. I still have some in I was going to take them to the museum. Those stamp books that we had to have. They gave each member of the family a book of stamps, and then when you went to the store to buy sugar, they would take a coupon. So if you had a big family, we were 6, I guess, 7. Well, there were 7, then we could buy at least 7 pounds of sugar or whatever it was, or shoes. We couldn't buy leather shoes, you know, we had to have stamps for them. I still have those books there. I found them the other day in my files. I'm a person that clutter, ew. Teachers are clutterers, oh gosh. Anyway, I said, what in the world is this? Look, and they had my name on it. They had the names of all the members of the family. And everybody there in Guachupangue had the same thing. They were in the same boat. We couldn't have any more. But we planted farmers, and we canned, right? And we survived. This is what you call organic planting. That's how I was raised. And I'm 77 years old now, So, and the doctor told me, said, you are very healthy because you had that organic food when you were young. True, true. And my mother did too. My mother lived to 103. And she didn't have any diabetes. She had, I don't know whether she had cholesterol. They used to eat pork all the time. But anyway, healthy. Let's put it that way, she wasn't ill at all. But it was because of the way that they lived, very simply, ate their own food, they grew their own stuff, they didn't put any stuff to kill bugs or anything like that. It's just natural stuff. We ate cherries from the trees, we ate apples from... Mom, have you ever went to get apples? My daughter asked me. Are you kidding? We had apple trees. That's one thing my grandfather from Martinez side, his whole family was Martinez there in Guachupangue, and they all had orchards. The Aran Martinez and Israel Martinez, they all had their property and they all had orchards. And we never knew what it was to go buy things at the store. Well, you bought them from the tree, got them from the tree. Natural, see? No spraying, no nothing. And that. And one of the saddest things that when I came back from California, I spent 33 years in California. I came back and I said, where have all the cornfields, alfalfa fields gone? Because my father used to plant alfalfa and hay, whatever, corn and all that. Instead, I saw mobile homes. I said, when did this come about? You know, mobile homes in the little farm. And where have all the little patitos gone from the river? The asparagus that we used to go pick up and stuff like that. And I know you probably are familiar with that. That's what we used to do. Ve junta quelite, asparagus by the river. True, all natural. Yeah.
So you have seen a big change since Los Alamos came. There has been.
Oh well, yeah. Los Alamos gave. Who was the one? Higgy, was that his name? The director? They called him Higgy, one of the directors there.
Los Alamos.
Yeah, and I quote him. He said, Española, Los Alamos is the welfare of Española. Because people from here, laborers worked there, and the economy was good, you know, here. Yeah. I didn't go to Los Alamos because I went in 1946. I went up there with my sister. She got me a pass, and we went in this horrible bus. And I was just, 15 years old, and I was afraid. I don't know whether my friends were afraid, but I was afraid to go there. And I went there, and in fact, I have a picture of myself when my sister took care of me. And I had this horrible feeling inside of me when I was up there. And I said, I don't think I could stay here. I think it's a little higher, and I was breathing a little faster. And I said, wow, I don't like it. I don't like it here. And then all these people going up and down, and all these soldiers and stuff like that. And I said, I don't like it here, you know, in my mind, in my own 15-year-old mind. And she took a picture of me, and I said, I wonder why I didn't go. My friends went to work, and I know, I said, I'm going to stay here, down here, locally in Española, and I got a job at one of the department stores, and I worked there. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to school. There was no colleges, and I wanted to go desperately. And then later on, I met my husband, who was a teacher, but I wasn't in school anymore. And I remember telling my friend this, and this is true. He said, "Oh, Tony, you mean to tell me you're gonna marry Tom?" And I said, "Tom wants to marry me." I said, "But you don't know him. He's from New York. What are you gonna do?" Well, we'll just have to find out. And he said, "Well, this is the way I see it, Tony." I said, "We can't go to college, but I'll marry a teacher, and that way I'll be able to get some education." See, I wanted to be educated, but unfortunately, they wouldn't let the girls go to Highlands. There were no scholarships, and I know I would have gotten a scholarship because I was in the National Honor Society, and I was a straight-A student in Española, and I skipped a grade. So I said, no, I could have gotten a scholarship to go, but would my parents have let me go? They didn't let the girls go by themselves. it wasn't, they
And then you went to college in California.
oh yeah, I went to after I had, when my little one, my number 7 daughter was in the kindergarten, I said, I'm going to school, I got to go. I told my teacher that I promised him that I was going to go to college. So I went and enrolled at the junior college in Ventura. And night school, 4 o'clock to 7, oh Lord. And I used to go down the beach. I used to drive my little 1965 Mustang to college over there at Ventura at night. And I went and I took, I took in Spanish because I wanted to be in bilingual education because bilingual was coming in and I spoke Spanish. I remember they tested me over there. Can you write a letter to the parents? And I used New Mexico Spanish when I used to write to my mom, of course. And so I wrote it down, and the principal calls me up and says, "You're hired. Come back for training." Okay. So I went and I got a school. I got a job at the district as an assistant because the teachers that were coming from back east didn't know any Spanish, and we were going to have all the Mexican kids. You know, they're migrant. I work with migrant education. And so they needed somebody to work with the children who didn't know English, see? And I continued going to school, the night school. And finally, oh gosh, no, don't give me no night school, forget it.
Okay, can you tell us about the Romero Cabin?
Okay, the Romero Cabin, according to the book, but they made some errors there. They said that the son-in-law helped him build it. No, because my aunt married after my mother. My mother married in 1919, and my mother's sister Ernestine married in 1925 or something like that. So, according to the book, it says that the Romero Cabin was built with the help of my grandfather's son-in-law, Vences Gonzalez. And I said, well, that's kind of strange because he wasn't even married to my Aunt Ernestine yet until 25, and it was in 1913 that it says there. But they somehow the people got together, a lot of Romeros from El Rancho. They were all related somehow, and they worked up there, and they had to have a building up there. So they built this with logs, and that's where they had their equipment, their farming equipment. So when they got kicked out, they just had to they didn't bring their cabin, of course. They brought all the stuff that they had there, and that was it. But they left the cabin there. But now the Historical Society decided to preserve it. And so they decided to move it someplace else from where it was. And my mother says, there's that cypress tree there that was growing right in front of that little cabin, and it's still there when she went up there, because she cut the ribbon. Well, she didn't, Vences did. But I don't know why Vences did it, because it was my mother and my Uncle Ernie who were supposed to cut the ribbon when they moved log by log by log, and they refabricated over there somewhere, and they had a ceremony. It's on television. It was on Channel 5, I believe. And my mother, she was 85 then, because I remember I came. She was over there with her little high heels all over, and I said, "Wow!" I tell you. And she said, and so they cut the ribbon. My Uncle Ernie, you know, they were the Romero Cabin, and then we went into the museum, and that's how it was preserved, and and then they wrote this book. But when I read it, I said, well, Vences wasn't the one who helped. It was other Romero people and Gonzalez people. I suppose there was a Gonzalez up there too. They all helped one another. What's one thing about the people from New Mexico here, Española, they help one another. We're all related. And they just say, well, you need help, we'll go help you kill the pig, we'll go help you do this, go help you do that, right? I mean, that's the way our culture is. They're always helping one another. And so when they went up there, that's what they did. They were building the road, building that. And it's the same road that the Camino de la Culebra that they use today. Yeah.
Did you visit the Romero Cabin?
Yeah, I went to the Romero Cabin. Not now, but I went to the Romero Cabin one time when my mother went up there, and that's when she made the comment. She said, there's that cypress tree there, and the ditch was right there. The water went right through to where we were, to where the cabin was when the men decided to stay up there so that they could go plow. And they, after the freeze, they went out there and they took their plows and they plowed their fields and they planted their corn, their beans, because we were the green bean people, the green beans, the pinto beans. And my grandfather had there's a barter system. See, they charged things at Bon and Old, and then when they sold their beans to them, the way that people who were sheep herders sold their sheep and their wool to the bond people, see? And that's the way my grandfather always said, well, go pacas el bon. That's what it was. And so they would bring the beans, the pinto beans, and then they would sell them to Mr. Bond, see? And during the year, they charged their stuff from Bon and O. Oh yeah, Bon and O was there forever. And my father told me that Bon and O, when the Bond's brothers came in, they had their first store was tents along the river, the tents. Because my father was little, he lived in what do you call it there, Corral de Piedra? There's where all the Martinez are. Corral de Piedra, they live there. And so he used to go to the Bond store, or to the Bond, after they had the store, right there in Española, and they would come down, all barefoot. We used to come down and run down there so we could work in the barn. They had barns in the back for the sheep and all that. So they would help, the little boys would clean the sheep, the barns and stuff like that. That's what he said he did. And before that, they would go to the river or near the river to clean up where the tents were. They had a tent where was a store. That's how then they went with Mr. Kramer in San Juan, see? They combined with Mr. Kramer because Mr. Kramer had a mercantile there. And that's where my father used to buy a lot of stuff from Mr. Kramer later on. But he used to say they came and the Bond brothers, they set up their tents right there by the river. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have seen that Los Alamos has really changed the valley.
Oh, but definitely the economic situation raised. We had, of course, at the time I didn't know, but you were not aware. But the people who were working had money and they bought cars. I never saw people buying new cars until Los Alamos came in, and then people, but not cars, but trucks, because farm people, like my daughter says, what was your first car like? Are you kidding? I said, we didn't have a car. We didn't go to places. We had trucks. My father had a long wheelbase truck. I remember that I used to help him go in because my brother was in the service. And so 6 o'clock in the morning, he said, we have the alfalfa in piles, and we had to bring it into the barn, and the hay that he had. So I was young, but I would go, and that's why I learned how to pull that. I used to pull this wire, and that was the starter for the truck. And then I would drive it down the field, and my father would get the thing and pile the alfalfa in the truck, and then he would drive it to the hay loft there, and he would dump it in. But I used to help him. I used to go during the summer, and I used to help him to see, because there were no boys there, and so my brother was gone. So I remember that, but that's when I would go with that trucker. It was fun. That was my first driving in the field.
So after Los Alamos came, people started getting trucks here.
Well, everybody had panel trucks because they carried people up there. The buses were gone, and I know that most of the people who worked up at Los Alamos had little panel trucks. And then they would, and this is an experience they would put benches. They would make wooden benches, and they would put them on the side, and it was enclosed, this little panel truck. And it so happened that I went to the prom in one of those trucks. I'll never forget this, because my dress got caught in one of those rough boards, and it got ripped a little bit. Oh gosh, I'll never forget that. And it was I went with it was Victor Maestas' truck, because Ben Maestas used to drive this little truck over there. But it so happened that this truck, well, I guess somebody borrowed it, because that was the only way we could get around. Somebody borrowed somebody else's bike or truck, and And I remember sitting in this thing, but so how come they have all these boards? Because they take people up to Los Alamos to work. They were transporting people because the buses were gone after the army left.
So you have seen lots of changes because of Los Alamos.
Oh, yeah, well, economically, yes, definitely. One of the things that we used to get, you see, we hardly had any Anglo people here in school. And the Pueblo children didn't go to, well, once in a while they would go to public school, but most of them went, when they went to boarding school someplace, you know. But we didn't have any, in my class, we only had the Willards who were Anglo, I mean, they worked in they were here. We didn't have any Anglo kids. So we were all Spanish kids, and so we didn't have that time that we could not get used to. We were so happy because we could, oh, I'll never forget this because I was in the 5th grade. I said, oh boy, now they invited me to play jacks. Now, we had a couple of Anglo children. I remember one of them lived in Guachupangue, as a matter of fact, and we were very thrilled because they invited us to go play jacks, me anyway. Oh, now I can speak English. Now I know that I'm in the loop, you see. And so and we were, but there was still friction between Los Alamos basketball players and the Hornets. Oh, they're coming from over here. Now, one time when we were, it was a tournament, I guess, or something like that. I don't know what it was, and I didn't see too much of this, and we ignored this stuff, this little friction. And some of these players who had come down from Los Alamos to play in our gym, the little tournaments that we had, started throwing tortillas to the gym floor. And I said, what? And he said, why are they doing that? We said, that's awful for them to throw tortillas, but we didn't get the gist of it. Let's put it that way. We didn't understand what they were referring to us, you know. But that was that, and they picked them up and put them away. The janitors did. So what could they do, you know? But we always beat them up. We always beat Los Alamos. What did we call them? The hilltoppers. They weren't the hilltoppers. They were the
Hilltoppers, I think they're
the hilltoppers. That's what they were. The hilltoppers. Oh well.
They might have been called something else.
I think there was something else before, and I remember that and they were green and white. Were green and white with a black and gold. All right. Anyway, there was friction sometimes, and of course there was friction when they were Crusaders. Oh, I tell you, one time the Crusaders lost to Española in the tournament, and the boys went and got ink. You know, we didn't have any ballpoints. We had to use ink or blue ink to write our stuff, and they threw a lot of ink right on the wall on the outside of the gym, right there. And Mr. McDowell found out who they were, and he got them in, and he made them go and start cleaning that mess that they had done. They threw the bottles of ink against the wall because they had lost Santa Cruz Crusaders. Ooh, that was a rivalry there. Yeah, we enjoyed the tournaments. It was good. The only thing we got along with the Native Americans, yes. Oh, yes. We got some kids from San Juan, kids from Santa Clara. And one of the things that I remember about the Native American, well, the Indian kids, was that they would not permit their picture to be taken. And I said, well, why? For the annual, because I was the editor for the annual for our, and they didn't want to. So we can't take it, it's against their religion, I guess, or their feeling. And then they finally one day, they told us, one of them, I remember, I think it was Johnny Archuleta from San Juan. He said the reason we don't do this is because it's against our belief that a picture will take a picture of our souls. I think that's what it was. And of course I didn't understand, you know, at the time, but I remember that. Some of them, we have some in the annual, 49 annual, that did take. The ones from Santa Clara did, but the ones from San Juan didn't. Well, the ones from San Juan are mostly a lot more Spanish than Native American, no? Yeah. They have all they learn the customs of the Spaniards and all that here.
Well, there's a lot that was
Yeah.
Told about the culture and the feelings and all that.
Oh, yeah.
The truth is the truth.
Yeah, and it comes because we never had any cultural. One of the things that we were very good people, very good kids because our parents, and this is the truth, no nos traigan vergüenzas. I don't know how they told you that. Said, no vengan con vergüenzas aquí. Don't bring any shame to this family. And we obeyed and said, we know your teachers are taking our place in school. You respect them. You respect them. You understand? And don't bring any shame, any quejas, anybody. So we never did. I never talked about, we had good teachers, very good teachers. I admired my English teachers because they said, oh, you know, they say poetry, literature. One of my teachers, Mrs. Moore, Bernardino Moore, wow, she says, because she said, my name is Bernardino Moore, I remember that, and this is Rosario. Our name ends in O, but that doesn't mean that we're male or female, or, you know, boys or men. Just because that's a language, a way thing. Just because boys' names are ending O or whatever, objects or nouns, you know, that end in O, they're male, supposed to be male, masculine. Anyway, but it was. Well, I love. That's where I got the idea. I want to be a teacher. I want to be a teacher, and I did. And when I saw Mr. Lupo when we had our 50th anniversary, and I said, Mr. Lupo, do you remember what you wrote in my book, in my annual book? No, he says, he's close to 80 now, 80 somewhere. And he says, no, Rosario, I don't remember. And what you told me, prom night, because I was the queen, prom night, my junior class elected me prom queen because I was their classmate, but I moved up. And so anyway, and he took the pictures, see. And he said, do you remember what you told me? No. He says, I tell you what you wrote in my book, and I didn't forget it. He says, every teacher's dream is to have a student like you. I wrote that, and I said, yes. And then you told me something on prom night. I remember when he was taking my pictures, Rosario, you are college material. Go to college. That's what he told me. I never forgot it. And when I saw him, I told him, I said, I told you that, yes. But Mr. Lupo, I didn't get to go to school right away. 20 years later, I went, and do you think I went to take the entrance exam? I aced that English test. Why? Because I remembered him, because they were so good. I think I was the only one. There was about 30 sailors, because I was by the CB base in Port Hueneme, and I went to take the test, and there were Filipino sailors, I remember, and we all took the test, and I you know, nouns, verbs, ta-da, and whatever, and the entrance, and I gave it to him, and then I got my little card, and says, you passed your test, you go into English 101. All right. And after that, I went through school writing good papers. My English teacher, my English instructor told me we were studying writing essays and stuff like that, expository writing. And he said, I want every one of you to write something over the weekend and bring it. That was my instructor. So I wrote something. I remember in my little typewriter, I wrote it, and it was a picnic at summer's end. That was a picnic. We went to Santa Clara Canyon, the family, in this little 1929 car. and it was my grandma and all that. We went an excursion. That's what it was. And I wrote about it. And then she was passing the papers out when we turned them in, and I noticed you kept mine and you didn't even return it. And bless her heart, she said, this, I want you to pay attention, people, this is expository writing. She says, Miss Fiorillo, do you want to come and read it, or shall I read it? And I went down on my seat like this, and she read it and said, this is what I call expository writing. Something that happens in your family. So that gave me, and said, we have to get the bugs out. She says, that's how we have to do. She gave me an A. And then I said afterwards, after I got out of school, after I finished, I took a correspondence course in writing for children and teenagers through Rhode Island Institute of Children's Writing. So, and then I published my books that I wrote, Bilingual Ed, for bilingual education. I wrote the Época de los Dinosaurios, the time of the dinosaurs. And I have them in there, and I published them, and the teachers use them for the classes, you know, they're in Spanish and in English, and it's like a little book, and that's what it is. But it was nice to see Rose Fiorillo, by Rose Fiorillo.
When did you first start learning English? At home you learned Spanish? No?
At home we spoke Spanish. Yeah. I started learning English in first grade, because we didn't have kinder. We just went to school in first grade. 6 years old we were. And our teacher, my teacher was Miss Nichols, and she used to talk to us in English. She used to read stories in English, and we had to learn. And says, they never told us anything not to speak Spanish. They just said, you know, you listen, and then we listen. And we used to take this little booklet, this little green booklet, and we read about a lot of things. I learned how to read right away, and so did Tony. And we were learning, reading all the time, but they inspired us. We used to sit in a little circle like this, and that's what I did when I was teaching elementary school with my little migrant kids and teaching them English. I did the same thing. We put in a little circle. And I said, Maestra, ¿por qué nos tiene ahí? Because I wanted to hear them read, and we would all read it together, and then we would all go, each of them would read a little paragraph, whatever. And that's the way I taught bilingual ed, see. But no, the teacher talked to us in English, and I was proud, and I'm sure all of them. He says, we got to learn English, we know. And we used to talk to each other in English. That's not the way you say it, this is the way you say it. And then one of the things that later on when we got older, we got teased because of our accent. And then later on, accent is not anything as long as you know what's up here, girls, people.
Well, thank you very much. You really gave a good presentation.
I gave a good...
A lot about the culture, nothing else.
Yeah.
You don't get that out of a textbook.
Oh, no. And then when you go to California, when I went to California, culture shock. Culture shock. And in Oxnard, where my husband got a job as an English teacher, there were a black section, a Mexican, a migrant section, and a Mexican-American section, and then a business section, bankers and lawyers downtown, in the north part of town. See, and one of the things that amazed me later on when I see a lot of black people, and then in school we had black children and all that, but they had busing, because we went to bus the kids from the colonia to the north part of town, so they could mix. And the kids, and that's what busing was all about. They took the kids from the north end of town to colonia, to kindergarten, so they could mix with the children over there and the Mexican migrant kids, you know, and they were all together, and it worked. And of course, the new ones that were coming in didn't speak English, so they had to go into bilingual ed. So that's what we had, and that's what I taught. And I enjoyed I think the most, I enjoyed 19 years I did. I enjoyed teaching the children English as a second language. I did a lot of educational material for Apple Company in New York, I believe. They published my stuff, and they didn't pay. They only sent me $40 worth of materials. But that was okay, and that was the important thing for me. And then from then on, I did my lessons in Spanish and in English and whatnot. And I can the other day had these people call me up and say they're making a film here in New Mexico, and we need somebody to play the mother of a young man, but I need somebody who speaks Spanish. And this friend of mine said, have Rosario go over and talk to her. So he says, do you speak Spanish? Yes. And he says, well, give me the lines. And he says, well, I will go film this little scene at your house if you want to. Sure, I have a hallway. Sure, I know. Just tell me the lines. And he told me them in English. And says, do you know how to do it in Spanish? Yes. It'll come out. I'll take him in English and it'll come out in Spanish. And it does. You get so used to that, to doing both languages at once, you see. So that's a skill that very few people have, for they can do it just like that. So he said, he gave me the lines. I said, do you know your lines when he came? Yes, I do. It was just a little scene that they're going to have in a movie for New Mexico. And so, so he says, I says, well, I have theater background. I mean, I was in the plays, 7 plays I was. And would you believe it? We had, you can take it with you with an all Hispanic cast. Except for the main character, he was from Taos, I think it was. Oh, that was fun, because this is the first time there's you can take it with you with an Hispanic cast. Here, we got a lot of good actors here in the Valley, very good. Yeah, and we did Please No Flowers. That's what I did. I played a Jewish woman, and then I played, what was it? There was another one that I played the Russian Duchess. And one of the things about having a Spanish accent, you can do a Russian accent real well. Oh, Kolenka, our time is coming, right?
Okay. It's been fun.
Yeah, that's another thing. That's why my books are called, the series is called It's a Pleasure to Learn. Es un placer aprender. That's what I named it. And so it's nice. I enjoy writing. I enjoy writing in Spanish and in English, and that's a skill that. And I had to take a whole Spanish class from this fellow who was a scholar from. He had gone to Spain, and he was from Santa Barbara, and from Newport Beach, and he was a professor there. And he told us, erase. That's in Southern California Spanish. He told us, because you're going to learn something different. And he was right, you know. And he said, and some of the ladies that were there with me said, we're not going to forget our Spanish. Of course not. You don't forget the one you home Spanish, you know, but you're going to improve on what you. So there's why I went into Spanish literature. Whoa, that was fun. And he said, I said, why do you sit over there in the front? Because I want to learn. When he reads poetry to me in Spanish, I want to know exactly how he does it and understand it. And he did. Oh, says don't pay attention to him. Oh, no. That's why I got an A and they didn't. Because I listened. And that's how I wrote when I started writing. I said, no, my Spanish has to be well done. I can't say, well, use slang. Cannot use slang. And that's what I do when I write my books. I write the Spanish correctly, because kids are going to be learning English. Well, they got to read their own language correctly. See?
That was very good. We learned a lot from you.
Oh, okay. A teacher never forgets. I taught another. I had about 3 years of teaching the Elderhostel when they came to in the state of El Rito, and they needed teachers. And Levi, you know Levi Valdez? Levi Valdez. Yes. He said, Rose, what are you doing? When after I came, well, nothing really. I'm just retired on Social Security. And he said, would you like to teach? Teach what? Spanish. He says, over there, we're having he explained to me the program. And I said, of course, and what text are you using? He says, well, we don't have one. He said, no. Well, can I use my own? I got material, you wouldn't believe it. Because when I came from California, I brought my materials with me. And basic Spanish, see? I wasn't going to go college Spanish, of course. And you know Sylvia Salazar, no?
Yeah.
Well, she taught the first group, and Sally Gonzalez taught the other. And I said, well, I'll do the basic. And I said, it's a pleasure to learn, señores. You know, there were 22, usually we had 22 students that came from New Jersey, New York, whatever, and they loved New Mexico. Oh, the artist people, they went up to Abiquiu to paint during the noon hour, and then they would come back. And anyway, I had, but Monday we would start, and he divided 7, 7, 7, you know, students for each teacher. Well, by Wednesday, I had all 13 because the wives and the husband would divide. They would go to one class, and then the wife would come with me, or whatever, you know, they could stop and go with the other group, whatever, if they wanted to. Well, what happened was that I used my theater skills. I had children plays in Spanish. And said, you're going to get on that stage and you're going to do this play, Jack and the Beanstalk, in Spanish. Oh, boy. And so I picked a giant and this and that, and blocked and lion, whatever. They enjoyed it. They loved it. In fact, I found a little card that they said, the light of our trip to New Mexico, to El Rito, was you who gave us the training in plays in Spanish. And that's what, I enjoyed those classes because I had no discipline problem. I said, don't fall asleep on me, I said, because in the afternoon they were already, you know, we were seniors like myself. And because if you do, I'll sing an aria. And I don't know what, oh, you like opera? Of course I like opera. You know opera? Of course I do. I can sing something from Puccini if you want to, because I learned this from my daughter, Marie, who sings. She's a mezzo-soprano. And said, yeah, and if you start going to sleep, I'll sing, and I'll holler, and you'll go down the hallway. I'll hit the high C eventually. Yeah, I had so much fun. And the point is that it was fun. And then I said, when you go to the cafeteria to eat, I said, you go and check to see, you try to use your Spanish, what you have learned about food and all that. So when they would come back, I would say, ¿y qué comieron? Comí lechuga, you know, and then all the stuff, the salad, ensalada, yes, and whatever they had, enchiladas or whatever, burritos. And I said, come on, I want to roll those, not burritos, burritos, burritos.